Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, my fine friends. Welcome to episode 10 of season 11 of the Tom Petty Project podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Brown. This is the weekly podcast that digs into the entire Tom Petty catalogue, song by song, album by album, and includes conversations with musicians, fans, and people connected with Tom along the way. It's been great seeing all the excited posts about the new Gennaro, I think it's pronounced Gennaro, tapes, the vinyl release on people's Facebook pages. And I decided against picking this one up because it's pretty close to Christmas and I have my eye on a mint copy of Highway Companion, which is a high priority for me to pick up. Man, it would be great if they repressed Highway Companion, She's the One, maybe even Echo. I think I saw Echo actually came out again on the Tom Petty store, but I went back to check later and it was already gone. So either they just got a limited number of vinyl that they found somewhere, put them up and then they sold out immediately, or I just dreamt that. I'm not too sure. Could be either way. Anyway, I'm sure that the new Edinburgh Live performance is great. The snippets I've heard sound excellent. Well, an excellent quality bootleg anyway, but it does still just have that bootleg quality to it. So just given the cost and shipping up to Canada and all those things, I had to pass on this one, which is too bad. And I did see there was a fair bit of consternation about the release only being available on vinyl rather than, CD, digital, all that kind of stuff. But it's important to remember that the performance was captured direct to tape, and it can sometimes be hard to transfer that to a digital medium and still be able to mix and master and make it sound okay. Now, down the road with AI tools being so good, I'm sure that eventually that will make its way onto streaming platforms. But for now, I think it's cool, actually, that it's exclusive to vinyl, and it makes it more collectible for those people who do decide to pick it up. The other thing I'd noticed was there were quite a few people on the Tom Petty Nation Facebook group saying that their copy of the vinyl was skipping. Now, I'm pretty sure that the whole pressing was done by Third Man Records. I know that they had the one variant that they sold through Third Man Records, but I think all of them were pressed at that factory. So I'd be willing to go out on a limb and say that if there's a problem with playing your vinyl copy, I very much doubt it's the vinyl itself. Sometimes when these things, especially if it's coming off tape, with the mastering, if you don't have a good record player, especially one that doesn't allow you sort of adjust the tension on the cartridge and whatnot, if it's mixed high or if it's mastered high, it could be just throwing the needle out of the groove. So my guess is probably that it's not a defect in the record and it's just a setup issue with the turntable. Which, not everyone's a complete audiophile vinyl head, but that would be my guess rather than it being a defect on the album. Anyway, over on Facebook, Jack McNay left the following comments about the Zero from Outer Space episode. He said, "This is the most I've thought about this song, and the first time since I bought the CD 7+ years ago. Thanks for giving us insights on easily the most filler song he did after the Let Me Up album. I think I agree with your original instinct of 6 out of 10. Goes to show how much I think about this song. When you made your factual muck-up last week, a usually eagle-eyed me did not notice. Nary an eye batted." Well, thanks, Jack. And I'd still argue that Zombie Zoo is more filler than this one. And my scores for the two songs pretty much reflect that. But you know what? A little filler or an album track here and there never hurt anyone, really. Over on Blue Sky, my pal Steve Ursel wrote, "I didn't really know this one. At first, I thought it was a bit silly, but then I came to see it as more whimsical than silly and in a good way. I agree with you, it's Dylan-esque and reminiscent of Subterranean Homesick Blues. It's a fun, throwaway song, and yet still has enough enigma in the lyrics to get you thinking." And thanks again, Steve, for catching my mistake on the cover version point. Even though no one else caught, or at least no one made me feel dumb enough for getting the song completely wrong. Over on Instagram, the queen of ratings guesses, Lisa Kelly Pennington, is back with us. She finished up 12-3 in trying to guess my ratings for Wildflowers, which is a really strong showing. I have 15 songs. She'd mentioned that the longer episodes were less conducive to her shorter commutes, and that's totally fair, but I'm glad she was finally able to finish up season 10 and start catching up on season 11. Okay, well, that's all the non-song chat for this week. The subject of this week's episode is the 4th track from the soundtrack album, Climb That Hill. So, without further ado, with no more do's, about or ado, I don't know what I'm talking about now. Well, let's get into it. Like Zero from Outer Space, this is a song from the album that never made its way into a tour set list. And I think that's a bit of a shame, really. The fact that a lot of these songs were never really performed live, but despite the fragmented nature of this album and it being as much a commissioned job for Tom that he wasn't usually pleased with as anything else, this song is one of the most surprising omissions from future sets. It was played live twice, once in the same May 17th charity gig, 1996, that we talked about last week. In fact, it was the second song after Zero from Outer Space that the band played that night. The only other live performance that is known anyway is from the fourth night of the 97 Fillmore residency, which took place on January 14th of that year. This version didn't make the live box set release, but there is a bootleg audio of it circulating, and I'll include a link in the episode notes for you so that you can go give that a listen on YouTube. Climb That Hill was the second single from the album and peaked at number 6 on the mainstream rock charts. It's also the first of 4 songs that were pulled over from the Wildflowers sessions, the others being California, Hope You Never, and Hung Up and Overdue. The difference between those 3 songs and this one, however, is that only minor edits were made to those, whereas Climb That Hill was completely re-recorded and slightly reworked lyrically. And I won't dig too far into the differences between the 3 recorded versions that we have of this song, as I'll talk about that more in depth when we get to the All the Rest season of the podcast, which will be, season 20, season 21, somewhere down there. The song kicks off with that fantastic distorted guitar and the kick drum marking the count. There's a second really interesting guitar part underneath it too, and it sort of comes in on the first beat of the first and third bars, then extends its part toward the end of that fourth bar, which wraps up the super short intro. But it's just a really unusual one, and I don't know exactly what it is. It sounds really, really effective, like a super heavy reverb, where maybe even they're just pulling off the reverb and taking out the dry signal. I'm not too sure exactly how they're doing that. And the bass guitar is just hitting those root notes. Again, very quiet, though, very low in the mix at this point, on the first and third bars, along with that guitar riff, which is in D, but ends on the 7th note. So you have this really suspenseful feel to the music right away. When Tom's vocal comes in, it is, as we have come to expect with the Rick Rubin collaboration, nicely forward in the mix and unadorned by effects. It's also very direct delivery. He's not leaning into any affectation on his voice, and it has the effect of being almost conversational. This first verse ends with that great tagline, I had to get up and climb that hill again. And we transition straight into the next verse without the turnaround progression that we'll hear later. In this second verse, the drums come in, and come in fully, and it's a really cool, really heavy backbeat with the bass line playing a more fluid, complementary part to keep that mid-tempo drive going. We also have the guitars separated out a little more cleanly now, and the part in the right channel is playing that slightly modified vocal melody over top of the same part in the left channel. Once we get around to that tagline again, the snare switches to 4 on the floor, or, every beat in the bar, with the kick drum staying on the 1s and 3s. I think it's only playing the 1s and 3s. Either that or it is playing all 4 with the snare. I couldn't quite make it out. As it comes out of the verse, we get that fantastic, gritty little lick to turn us around into the chorus. And it's actually 3 guitar parts, 1 left, 1 right, and 1 down the middle, and they're all playing very slightly different inversions on the progression. And the chord that the guitar in the middle channel finishes on really adds to that uneasiness because it's a suspended chord, unlike the other 2 parts. The chorus changes the starting point and moves us to G, or G5th technically. So G5, G5th is, that's just the 1st and 5th notes of the chord, without the major or minor third, which would make it a full chord. So the progression here is a development on the verse, which is really just those 2 chords until the tagline. This B section also has Howie Epstein adding a high harmony part to Tom's lead vocal, which is also stretching almost into that falsetto range, not quite. After the chorus, the song moves back into that transitionary phrase with the 3 guitars, and again, there's a little spoken word phrase from Tom that I can't really make out. And you know what, I won't speculate, because I speculated on the Walls episode. I'm pretty sure I got it wrong, so I won't speculate here. If you think you know what he says, let me know. The chorus then repeats, fed in by a 3-note floor tom fill without any new elements being brought into the mix. And I don't know if I'd ever really noticed how crunchy and heavy of a guitar song this one is. It's funny how things like that can creep up on you sometimes and you realise, oh yeah, this is a pretty direct tune. And Benmont, well, he's nowhere to be found. Alrighty, folks, it's time for some petty trivia already. Look at that. Your question from last week was this. Mike Campbell is the only man to sing lead vocals on a Heartbreakers record, and the song he leads is on Echo. But which song is it that he sings? Is it A, One More Day, One More Night. B, I Don't Want to Fight. C, About to Give Out. Or D, This One's for Me. Well, Mike is, of course, the only person to sing lead on a Heartbreakers record, apart from Tom, and the only member of the band to have a sole songwriting credit on one, too. Now, understandably, Echo isn't an album Tom seems to want to dwell on with Paul Zollo in conversations with Tom Petty, so there isn't a ton of information about these songs. So rather than dragging this section out, I'll just tell you that the answer is B, I Don't Want to Fight. And I'm really looking forward to diving into Echo next season because there are some deep cuts on that record that are absolutely superb and I can't wait to get to. So your question for this week is this. Talked a little bit at the top about the new release of the Gennaro tapes live in Edinburgh. So the Orange Wisp variant of that release was released exclusively via which outlet? Was it A, select independent record stores? B, the Tom Petty online store? C, Third Man Records? Or D, Amazon? Okay, back to the song. I do talk about song structure and A sections and B sections. So again, just as a refresher, an A section is usually a verse, B section is usually a chorus, and a C section is usually a bridge or middle eight. So, just a different section that's not the verse or the chorus. And this song is another example of Tom not sticking exactly to the commonly prescribed template. So rather than A, B, verse, chorus, or verse, chorus, A, B, A, we have A, B, B. So verse, chorus, which isn't super common. Now, if you want to call that turnaround guitar lick a C section, you could call it a C section. I don't know if I would. It's more just a transitionary phrase. But if you did call that the C section, then that would make it A, C, B, which again is just a little bit unusual. So I quite like that about it. Anyway, after the second chorus, we get a nice drop out from the percussion and we go back to the intro arrangement with the addition of the bass mirroring the riff in certain parts and being brought up in the mix a little. The drums come back in fully for the last lines with that 4-count snare before we head back to that wonderful 3-part guitar lick. With 40 seconds remaining, the unmistakable sound of Mike Campbell's lead guitar comes into the left channel, and his tone on this one actually reminds me a little bit of the aesthetic of Hypnotic Eye. There's a really greasy blues edge to it, but it's not drenched in reverb, so it packs a bit of a punch. He's playing really simple, clean lines and laying into the vibrato at the end of each phrase to make those passages feel moody and dark. There's a great little bend that he plays right at the tail end of this solo that he also used notably in the Running Down a Dream solo. So give that a listen and see if you can hear it. The other thing that adds significant weight to this section of the song is the deep rumbling bass that is definitely being pushed further forward in the mix, certainly further forward than it was in the first half of the song. And then to end the track, there's a great hard stop on those descending 3 chords, and they're not metronomically lined up, but they're accentuated by a fabulous little bass guitar slide in there. The last notes of Mike's solo decay off with the remnants of those big power fifths in that descending 3 power chord progression. And as a last note on this, my guess would be that on those rhythm guitars, I doubt that they're using distortion pedals. And I don't actually know how often, I don't know exactly what the Heartbreaker setup was with that. But it's the crunch you get from turning up the gain on your amp to give it that lovely, warm, natural sounding distortion rather than it being shoved through an effects pedal. So I'm not 100% sure on that, but that would be my guess. The lyrics in this one they're fairly unambiguous, certainly in the chorus, but you have some of those wonderful little vignettes that Tom is adept at writing and then peppering in through these types of songs. So the song obviously is about perseverance and determination. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and whether you want to or not, drag yourself up and over that hill again. It could relate to any number of life experiences, which is why it's a song that will always be resonant for people. But then you have those wonderful little disconnected snapshots in the verses. Someone threw me in the dirt, kind of got my feelings hurt. Weed was burning somewhere down the wind. And I talked about the suspension that the initial section of this song sets up. And I love that line, weed was burning somewhere down the wind. It's that idea that you know something's happening and it's fairly close by, but you can't actually see it. And in the second verse, we have one of Tom's incidental characters comes into play. Little Lucy's such a doll. like to climb her garden wall, but she only sees me as a friend. So you dust yourself off and you go again. The last verse brings in a slight sense of danger and is the most direct line you could relate back to the breakup of Tom's marriage. Tempers flaring and words are spoken. You close one door and another opens. You hear the music and you're wondering. It's a verse that opens up the possibility of change, if not actual resolution. It's a verse that doesn't wrap anything up in a neat little package, but hints at something beyond itself. It's all very nicely constructed in a similar way that Crawling Back to You is, with those, again, that song has disconnected narrative verses and then a broader chorus. So lots of ideas and lots of sort of themes that Tom was playing around with during the period in which he wrote all these songs. So this is a song that, for me, it sounds the most closely related to what Echo ended up being sonically. And it's almost that bridge between Wildflowers and Echo, as it was a Wildflowers session song that has an Echo feel and ended up on the album in between. There's a dark edge here that Tom would really explore in Echo that makes the song feel, it feels a little incongruous on this record, but I'm glad that it did end up on here because, otherwise it could have been lost to the mists of time. And I'm sure it would have surfaced eventually with the expanded release of Wildflowers, but I think it always deserved to be on an album proper. And I think it's really cool that it was released as a single. At 3 minutes 58 seconds, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it has that very familiar riff-led construction that most Mike Campbell co-writes tend to have. And hey, he's Mike Campbell for Pete's sake. What do you want him to do? Write a harp riff? Okay, Pettyheads, that's it for this week. This song was a little bit of a grower for me, and it's one that's definitely gone up. I think it's gone up a full point probably since I sat down to pull it apart to see what secrets it's hiding. The fact that, yet again, there's a density to the guitars on this song that's paired with a real simplicity to the parts themselves, all accentuated by Tom's excellent, at times forceful, at times tentative delivery, make for a song that comes together to be greater than the sum of its parts, which is always a good thing. It has a very specific mood and vibe to it that I really enjoy. So, for all these reasons, I'm going to give Climb That Hill another really solid 7 out of 10. Tom Petty Project is a proud member of the Deep Dive Podcast Network. Go check us out at deepdivepodcastnetwork.com. I'm sure you'll find something there that you like. There's tons of great people doing tons of great podcasts. And if you've never checked it out and you have even a passing interest in heavy metal, I cannot recommend And Volume for All highly enough. The host, Quinn, is a brilliant writer. He's an actor, very, very funny guy. And he sort of builds these narrative arcs within this podcast that sort of... whether you like heavy metal or not, it's one of those shows you can listen to just for the entertainment of it. So go check that one out. It's like I said, it's a gold standard for me in music podcasting. You can also check out my other podcast, Seaside Pod Review, a Queen podcast that I do with my bestie Randy Woods, as well as the Ultimate Catalog Clash that I co-host with my great pal Corey Morissette. We just wrapped up and came out today as I'm recording this, season 4 of the Ultimate Catalog Clash. We've picked what's happening in season 5. It's a bit of a different one. It might be a little bit chaotic, but in a good way. We have one more episode left in season 4 that we are recording this week with a pal of ours down in Australia. And after that, we'll be moving on to season 5. So go check that out. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and YouTube at The Tom Petty Project and on Blue Sky at Tom Petty Project. Go follow, like, subscribe as applicable. And again, do please leave a review or a rating if you haven't done that already. It does help. Keep talking to me on social media, and I will keep reading out your comments. Well, if they're good, let's keep the standard up, because so far they've been pretty good comments. As a weekly reminder, the Tom Petty Project is not affiliated with the Tom Petty Estate in any way, and when you're looking for Tom's music, please visit official streaming platforms or go to your local independent record store. Go buy some physical media. It's good for you. Good for your soul. If you're looking for official merchandise, go to store.tompetty.com. And if you're looking for merch for this show, and I've been selling a few more T-shirts lately. I don't know if people are just sort of stumbling across those on TeePublic, but it's kind of nice to see that the word is getting out there. If you want to go find those, you can go to store.tompettyproject.com. Don't forget to check out Tom Petty Nation and the Tom Petty Fans Forever groups on Facebook. And also check out Channel 31 on SiriusXM, which is Tom Petty Radio. Until we meet again next week, keep listening to and sharing Tom's music. Try to be kind. Try to say I love you to someone at least once a day, at least. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll be back with you next week to definitely talk this time about the cover of Lucinda Williams' marvelous Change the Locks. Bye-bye.